Welcome again. It was an experiment. It's our first time doing a kind of stand-up lunch thing. So in many ways, thought it was a beautiful day and it worked out well. I was a little bit kind of dreading this morning when it was pouring rain. That would be a colossal disaster. So luckily, God was on our side. And let's just hope to my presentation He remains by my side. So my presentation today, I wanted to kind of reflect a little bit about this thing, Catholic AI. And first of all, I want to just acknowledge, like, Catholic AI, I don't even know what that means. Like, but for lack of a better term, and maybe we have to kind of work on how we want to define the church's quest to leverage AI in the most prudent way possible. But I thought it would be helpful to share a little bit about our own experience as a company trying to build an AI which is faithful, trying to be faithful to church teaching, and what we see coming next that kind of excites us. Okay, this is going to be the shortest history ever. Once upon a time in the 50s, the AI was born. And then for most of us, it wasn't really a real thing until, ChatGPT, right? And like you, AI had been an interest of myself for quite some time, but I didn't think we were there yet. I didn't think we were going to be there for some time yet. And then boom, this thing happened. And what really kind of started our kind of quest to try and build a faithful AI system was when we found out that Catholics, apparently a lot of Catholics, were using ChatGPT. Now, I want to say, like, I love what ChatGPT's done. I think what Sam Altman's done is incredible. I think the company, what they've done is incredible. And we've benefited immensely from Sam and his work. So I don't want this to feel like this is anyway a knock on what ChatGPT's done to the world. I'm enormously grateful. At the same time, there are some downsides to ChatGPT, and people were asking it questions about church teaching and things like that. And its propensity to hallucinate, it's so eager to please. Sometimes it'll make things up in order to give you an answer you want to hear. And the fact that a lot of its generation wasn't grounded, in citations that you could actually reference, right, to know if what it's saying is actually true. And so what we were curious about is there a way we could build a compound AI system that could mitigate the downsides of ChatGPT for this particular use case, the Catholic Church? And that kind of quest is what got us started in this. And so there were kind of two key measures we were kind of curious about. One was about, could we make the thing faithful, right? So not hallucinate on fundamental church teaching, and provide accountability and transparency about where the generated responses are coming from. And then, of course, is this even useful, right? Can AI be made useful to an extent that it's worth investing in? And so that's why we decided to create something called Magisterium AI. And so initially, this was just a kind of a pilot project. We took 600 magisterial documents, the ones you'll expect, Code of Canon Law, compendiums, and all that kind of stuff, and we threw it in a knowledge base and put an AI wrapper on it. And then we started sending it out to kind of chanceries around the world and getting canon lawyers and things to start testing it, to see where was it flawed, or where were the gaps in its capabilities. We had our own ideas about that, but we wanted to hear what other people had to say. And so this was a very informative process for us. And at the time, when I launched it, EWTN very graciously offered to do an interview with me on this upon launch. Now, in hindsight, that was a very stupid idea on my part because it wasn't ready yet. And so initial traction was good, but this is what it felt. This is what it felt like. We started getting this huge swamp of traffic. We crashed, and we had to go to Sam Altman, and he had to come in and put us back in business, basically. And so, anyways, it was a very informative learning experience, and it did convince us that tools like this, there is a demand for them. And so we said, okay, well, to ignore that demand is there probably is not in the best interest of the church. And if we're not going to leave people any other tools, unlike the secular AI systems like ChatGPT and Google Gemini, well, how can we be upset when they're hallucinating and leading some people astray? So we decided to double down as a company, and we basically kind of dropped everything else we were working on and just started singularly focusing on this. All right, but I just want to share a little bit about some of the technical challenges that we encountered along this way. So hallucinations was a big one, right? And one of the things that we discovered, I'm going to talk about this separately, but is the long tail, or the possible questions or prompts people were submitting, went well beyond what we had expected. We expected the system to be used primarily for asking straight up catechetical questions, right? Based on the documents of the church and stuff. People were giving it a lot of not bad. And what we found is when the AI, and we set up kind of a RAG system, so retrieval augmented generation, meaning that everything the AI said was meant to be grounded in an actual document of the church. And that helps ensure that the thing is not going to waver off in the wrong direction. So that was one way that we're trying to mitigate hallucinations. But because these questions were so far afield, what ended up happening is the AI would start trying to answer based on the knowledge and its parameters in its brain. So it's training data and not the resources that we had. And when that started happening, it didn't always get the answer wrong, but the likelihood, the percentage that it would hallucinate increased. And so what we realized is that the first exercise that we needed to figure out in order to mitigate hallucinations, and I'm not going to talk about the rails and the prompt engineering we had to do to try and discipline the system. I mean, that was a whole nother thing. But we realized that priority number one had to be about expanding the knowledge base. And we had no idea when we started this what expanding the knowledge base would mean, but it ultimately meant getting our hands on all church teaching available online. And so we spent basically a year just digitizing church teaching and converting it, vectorizing it, and then chunking it so that we could make it available to people in the references. And the more we started to embrace magisterial teaching, as much as we get our hands on, that started filling out gaps in the AI's knowledge, and it stopped going to its training data, or at least it stopped to a large extent, and that mitigated hallucinations pretty effectively. There's a bunch of other things we did, but that helped. So I just want to say, like, digitization, I think, is key to this. A big chunk of the church's teaching, at least for the last 120 years, is available online, but a big chunk of it is not yet. And that's one of the things that we as a company are taking on as a mission, is we have to digitize, vectorize, chunk, and make available to people as much church teaching as we get our hands on. So another thing here is, of course, the ground truth. And again, I've reflected on this. The ground truth basically meant like making sure that when the AI was generating, that it was always generating based upon church documents. And I'll just speak a little bit about contextualization. So what was interesting was, because the long tail, sometimes people would give personal situations and they ask, what would the church think about this? And that freaked us out, right? Because that's the role of a priest. We did not want our AI system doing this, but we were curious to see if there are ways for the AI to at least be better at this. Because there's never a way to entirely prevent people from the AI from opining on certain situations. And what we found was, when we started moving beyond the ex cathedra statements and the doctrinal, official documents to embrace things like the general audiences of the popes for the last 120 years, the homilies of the popes, this started to really, really help out the AI system, because it was getting the contextualization of church teaching in, around current events and people's unique circumstances. And that really helped the AI system to kind of generalize this knowledge a little bit more effectively. And I say generalize it, I don't mean that in a too sophisticated way, because it's still an autoaggressive LLM with serious limitations. But all right, so I've spoken about the long tail. That was one of the big surprises we had. And what was interesting too, the long tail in different parts of the world was wild. So Magisterium AI is used in 165 countries. I think it's more than that now. But 165 countries. And it was fascinating. And we anonymized, so we don't know what users asking what questions, but we can still see the questions come in. And we do that for evaluation purposes to make sure that the AI is not saying things it shouldn't. It was really interesting to see the focuses of the questions from certain parts of the world. And so we realized in part of this is we had to make sure that when we were prioritizing that, what we should be ingesting into the knowledge base to make available to people to be the AI system, that we were making sure we weren't ignoring certain regions of the world that had kind of a preoccupation with certain questions. Because it'd be very easy to focus on our primary market, the United States, and kind of ignore Southeast Asia. But actually that became very difficult because Hong Kong and Singapore became one of our largest user groups very early on with the product. And so that forced us to start evaluating a little bit more carefully where these users are coming from and what questions are they asking, and how can we try to engage in a dialogue with those local churches to try and get our hands on documents which may be assisted in helping answer their questions. Okay, and reasoning, of course, is one of the biggest challenges, right? So that taking a church teaching and then being able to apply it in a particular context, that requires some degree of reasoning. And of course, there's been, OpenAI's O1 with chain of thought and reflection techniques have, to some extent, been able to help the system reason a little bit better. But this is an ongoing challenge. And what we found is you still can't trust the AI system's reasoning capabilities, right? It's still very dubious. And so again, it comes down to expanding the knowledge base, because you want it to rely on the basically the reason, the wisdom of the church, and not of its own kind of parameters and data. Another thing that was just been wild, I know you all, is the rate of change, man. Like it felt like every week we were having to test and evaluate a new model, right? Because they had increased capabilities. And so this rate of change was, and this is one of the most preoccupying things at our company, is we always want to be sure that we're offering the most up-to-date model under the hood, and we have several of them working agentically together, because of course our focus is on quality. I mean, when you were dealing with something like sharing church teaching via an AI system, it freaks me out, right? Because this is someone's spiritual life here, and you just don't want to get it wrong. And we have found that actually with every model upgrade, and we've changed models from different companies and stuff too, that has made a difference. And so we're really benefiting from this crazy hot war between the AI companies. And I do think over the next year, the AI's ability to kind of reason, or at least follow the directions and instructions we're giving it, will become better, and that will help us a lot in this particular use case. And of course, evals, this is one we continue to work on and struggle with. In our particular use case, of course, there's all kinds of benchmarks to evaluate the capabilities of large language models, but in our Catholic context, we realized that we need to come up with robust evaluations for our use case. And every time we change a model out under the hood, we have to then retest, right? To make sure that the model hasn't somehow, it's got some weird rule set in it, or guardrails put in by the company, which is problematic. And this happened to us. Trying to think if I should name the companies, if that's cruel, but some of the companies' models had rule sets which wouldn't allow it to answer certain questions around church teaching. It just refused to answer, right? And we told the companies this, and they said, "Oh no, that's not good. We're going to work on fixing that." But of course, they're in this crazy battle to try and build AGI, and that wasn't a priority for them. And so we realized that that will, in some ways, that means we have to be very discriminative about what models we use, the ones that are okay answering church teaching, and also that we have to try as much as possible to keep an open dialogue with the companies, so at least they're aware of some of the problems they have with their Rails. Okay, and so to sum this part up, we realize that if the church is going to use AI, and every ministry in the church, diocese, whatever, had to figure out all this stuff out, AI adoption in the church is going to take forever, and that's just not acceptable. I think the church does need to be a leader. I don't mean technologically in this, but we have to be leveraging the technology like the printing press effectively. Otherwise, some people could be led astray. And so what we asked ourselves as a company, because initially we built Magisterium AI as kind of a B2C product, right, direct to consumer, and we thought that might be the way that we should approach AI, is just keep building products to go directly to consumer. And we realized that that's ultimately not the right approach, at least for us. That what we saw was most necessary was to take what we had learned and try to make it available to everyone else to build on top of. And so we could be focused on trying to improve the reason capabilities of the model and expanding the knowledge base and coming up with better rails to ensure fidelity to church teaching. We could stay singly focused on that and allow people to take advantage of what we built and then add on their own applications on top of that. And so we decided to basically transform into basically being more of a platform. And this has actually been very freeing for us, because it means we haven't had to think so much about user journeys and building unique products, just working on basically engineering challenges and working with partners to get our access to more knowledge to improve the reliability of AI in our use case. And so our mission became to build AI and accelerate adoption in service of the Catholic Church. That's as a company, that's our guiding light. So throughout this process, we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of ministries and dioceses and things, and it became very clear to us that there were certain adoption challenges which would prevent AI from being used. And so I'm going to kind of bang through a few of these, and some of the attempts we're trying to do to mitigate these adoption challenges. And again, we recognize that we're just one company, and there'll have to be a lot of people engaged in this process, but maybe some of you will relate to some of these. So the first one is vectorization. So, large language models, they don't speak, you can interact with them through natural language, but ultimately what they are best with handling is numbers. And so one of the biggest challenges that we had, and I mentioned this in the beginning, was taking church teaching and then converting it, vectorizing it, so that the actual text basically becomes a mathematical representation of the meaning of the text. And this allows the AI to then tap into that knowledge. But one of the powerful upsides to vectorization is it makes the data language agnostic. So when you take a library and you vectorize it, like we started doing with the Pontifical Rare Institutes library, because it's now in a mathematical form, the AI can tap into it and then bring that winsome insight to anyone in any language that it's capable of. And this is insane, like for democratizing access to knowledge. And so this is kind of a key unlock. Like if you really want to leverage AI effectively, I think the best approach is to vectorize it. And so, but this is a bit of an issue, right? Because that means that anybody who really wants to, like, you know, build their own knowledge base that AI can tap into has to vectorize it. I still think that's the best approach. There's not ways for it to using computer vision to tap into it visually, but I still think vectorization is the best approach. So what? So now everyone's going to have to figure out how to like vectorize their own knowledge base. This was a problem. So, and the problem initially started for us with the Pontifical Oriental Institute and Pontifical Salesian University as well. And so we created this product, you know, Vulgate. And, you know, we still call it kind of like an AI library platform, but really there's kind of two components to it. So the first is like an AI ingest system, or we call it RAMP, where basically you take, it could be raw text, it could be, you know, scanned documents, audio files. And it's just the AI ingests it, and then it basically extracts the text, cleans it, labels all the data like header, footnote, and so on. And then it converts it into vectorized form and deposits in a private silo. And so this was, and using computer vision and you know, NLP and everything else in this, it's incredible how much time and money you can save, because this process used to be very manual, right? You run OCR, extract the data, then you have to clean up all the weird artifacts, and then someone has to go around and label the data, and this just took forever. But with the new AI approach, the agentic approach, you can actually get AI to do most of that heavy lift. And every month, the AI starts doing more and more, and it requires less and less of a human in the loop. So I thought this is one way to help speed up or scale digitization in the church. We've seen some great results, and there's still a lot more work to be done, but that's one key facet of Vulgate. The others, and Father David mentioned it, is the ability to leverage not just keyword search, but neural and semantic search, right? So when I type in my query, let's say you go to Google and you type in, what's the stock price for Apple? How does Google know that you're talking about the company, not the fruit, right? It's because it actually goes and, you know, vectorizes that query, and that allows it to understand the intent of your search query. And we wanted to leverage the same technology in Vulgate. So when someone goes and asks a question, it's vectorizing your intent. It goes and searches the vector database and pulls out the knowledge which is relevant, and it brings it forward to you. And again, in your natural language. And this, to me, particularly in Rome, is so incredible, because when you walk around these libraries, and these libraries are full of books in all kinds of ancient languages, the idea that once you vectorize them, you can tap into that wisdom and insight without having to study the language is incredible. So this gets me really excited. So Vulgate was a way of solving this issue of vectorization, and it's something that through our API now, it's available to any ministry to leverage. We started in pilot with the Pontifical Universities. We'll be opening that up. But in the future, one of the other use cases for it that I'm excited about is the church needs access to a lot more data if we're going to be serious about AI. And this is a means for actually collecting that data. Now, of course, anyone who's using Vulgate, that's your data. But if you decide that you wish to kind of open source it or contribute it to a larger project of trying to you know, train more a Catholic language model, then that becomes an option, because it's in a format that we can tap into. Right. So I've talked about this, like knowledge base corpus size. This is a big issue, and it certainly would be an adoption issue for a lot of ministries. And I've kind of hinted at why, right? Let's say that you have a knowledge base of, let's say, 10,000 or let's say 5,000 documents, and you want an AI to then be able to access those documents and chat with their users. I've hinted at this. The issue is, if the users don't stay in a very clear lane, they start asking weird questions and things, the AI is not going to have access to enough knowledge. It'll start going to its training data, and it will start hallucinating. So one of the things that we wanted to do through Magisterium AI is, like I said, to make that platform available to everyone so they could build on top of us. And so the idea with our new API that we just created is that I'm just going to use Catholic Answers for fun. So let's say I'm Catholic Answers, and I want to build a user interface on our website for our users to chat with. Right. So when someone submits a query on Catholic Answers, you know, user interface, that's then vectorized. So the idea would be that the AI, in this case Magisterium AI, would go to its own knowledge base, which consists of most of available church teaching, and check and see if there's any knowledge there which is relevant to answering the query. And then through the Vulgate API, it would then tap into Catholic Answers' own knowledge base and see if any of its own knowledge is relevant to answering the query. It would then extract that knowledge, and it would feed both those knowledge sources to the AI. What that does is that expands the breadth of what the AI has in answering the questions, and that helps mitigate hallucinations. And so this is one of the reasons why we decided to take this specific approach. The idea is that if you use the API, you have everything we have and whatever you choose to offer. And so in this way, everyone immediately gets access to, I don't know what our knowledge base is up to now, 14,000 documents or something. And we hope that that will speed up adoption. Okay, so another challenge that we've heard from ministries is, okay, but we have to build these like front-end user interfaces for the AI systems, right? And we don't have the technical expertise to do that. Some do, some don't. How can we assist with that? We want to leverage your API, but we don't know how to build the front end. And so we started conversations with partners like Fuzati and Highland to help basically build the front ends and then hook in to our APIs. And that takes some of the technical burden away from some ministries that want to focus on their ministries and less on the engineering part of it. So this is something we continue to invest on and expand. And technology sharing is something we're very committed to as a company. Right, so capabilities. All right, so RAG-based systems, I mentioned retrieval augmented generation AI systems are really powerful and useful, but the technology is starting to get a bit old. And namely, it's not as performant as like training a model and directly querying it. And so we're always trying to figure out ways to like reduce the time to first token, make these systems more efficient. And as we're working towards building voice UIs where you can actually speak to the AI system, RAG is just really too slow for this use case. And so in collaboration with Mark Basiak, who's one of the 500 people in the world who knows how to actually train a model from start to finish, we trained the world's first Catholic language model, which I'm happy to announce to you that it now exists. Now, we're not going to like put it online yet and give it access to because there's still a lot more work to do about it. But it was a pretty cool process in creating this language model. First off, I want to say it humbled me when you take the entirety of the church teaching that we've been able to get our hands on, which is publicly available, and you compress that down, it was 140 megabytes. Right. So frontier language models are trained on 20 trillion tokens, right? So that's like maybe 10 trillion words. So that's a big problem, right? So if the Catholic Church wants to get like frontier capabilities from a Catholic language model, think again, we would need a lot more data. And so then the question was, is there a way that we can ensure that corpus of church teaching is trained into the model? But of course, if we want to have it have multilingual capabilities, right, and have ability to reason, well, we'd have to get other data sets for that because there's not sufficient amounts of data to give multilingual capabilities to the model. And that means bringing in external data sets, and there's a real risk of contaminating church teaching as a result. This is something that we continue to work on. So far, it's pretty good, but there's still a lot more work to be done. But this, to me, is a really important experiment. And what we'll probably end up doing in the short term is we'll have it working agentically under the hood. And so it will, through a high technique, provide kind of suggested answers, which will always be then checked and reviewed by our current AI systems to make sure it's not wild. Because the reason we did this, it's a bunch of reasons, but one is with RAG systems, when you submit a prompt, it's basically going and checking to see if there's any chunks or pericopes which are useful in answering, and it's pulling all those together. Then AI reviews them all and then writes a response. But it's looking at church teaching in a very specific way. It's only looking at these very particular these quotes and things. But we know that church teaching is far bigger than that, right? And it's like with you spend years and years doing a PhD in theology. Your conceptual understanding of theology is a lot bigger than just a few pericopes, right? Because you're able to see things on a much higher plane. And so we knew that RAG approach is never going to truly get us the results that we want. And so we feel like training a model is a way for the AI system to see kind of connections and patterns in the Catholic data that maybe we can't even see because none of us can see it that clearly. That's just a hypothesis, but it's something we're really interested to work with the theological community to find out how it's able to contribute to working with them people to do theology. Okay, so what's next? What's next? I'm going to bang through these quickly because I don't want to leave lots of time for the panel. So enhanced reasoning. So obviously that's something that we study very closely in the field. How can we bring enhanced reasoning capabilities to the models? ChatGPT-o1, as I mentioned, very, very cool. There's still a lot of technical breakthroughs that are required. I mean, AIs don't really reason. If you understand how an all-regressive model works, it's just next token prediction. And so I think we're a ways off. Max Tegmark would know much more about this than I would. But I do think in the next few years we will see some meaningful breakthroughs in reasoning, even just going through the building and chain of thought. And when those breakthroughs come out, we'll try our best to make sure they're leveraged for our use case. Knowledge democratization. This I'm very bullish on. the idea that in Magisterium AI, which consists of a magisterial mode, which is official church teaching, and a scholarly mode, you can switch between them. In scholarly mode, this embraces much broader Catholic theological and philosophical thought. So all the works of Aquinas, Augustine, Fathers of the Church are all in scholarly mode. And it was really hard to get our hands on all that stuff and vectorize it. But now it's available to anyone in the world on any device in their native language. And that's wild. And so to me, that's reason enough to continue pursuing AI. It's the ability for it to democratize church teaching and make it accessible to anyone who has an internet connection. Just briefly on the Alexandria Digitization Hub. So I mentioned digitization is key to this, and I want to acknowledge, SMA, who's present with us today, who basically helped build like the first, effective scanner. Their company builds these leading scanners, these robot scanners, which automatically turn the pages. We've been using them at the Orientalian pilot, incredible piece of technology. One of the things that, like I said, that we need to do is find a way to scale digitization. So Vulgate is a useful tool once you've scanned a document to then take it to the next level, extract the information and vectorize it. But then the physical scanning part is still a bottleneck. How do we scale the physical scanning of these documents? And so in partnership with SMA, we're exploring ways to expand access to scanners and then integrate Vulgate directly into them to help speed up this digitization process. And I'm excited to announce that we're planning to create the Alexandria after the Library of Alexandria Digitization Hub here in Rome. And we're going to get a whole bunch of these state-of-the-art robot machines and make them available to all the pontifical universities, anyone who wishes to. They can bring their knowledge to the hub. The hub will then digitize it for them and then make it available to them. And if they so choose, they can then open source that through scholarly mode or wherever else to everyone else in the world. And this gets me really excited because, like I said, when you walk around these libraries and you see all these books, many of which probably haven't been opened in hundreds of years, all that wisdom and insight which is sitting there on the shelves, if we can get our hands on that and make it available to people, I think it could supercharge research and just be cool. A Catholic embedding model. So one of the things that we realized, this process of vectorization requires an embedding model, which is what actually takes the text and converts it into a mathematical expression of its meaning. But these embedding models, they weren't fine-tuned for a Catholic use case. So we know there's knowledge loss there. So this is something that we're looking to help mitigate. Can we fine-tune an embedding model that's able to capture philosophical and theological nuance better? And so there's less knowledge loss. And this is just a research project we want to work on with others to see if we can do. And I'm confident that we can do this one. So I talked about the voice UIs. This is a big one we're working on right now, so that in theory with Magisterium AI, you could give it a curriculum and then have it actually work with a particular individual to help teach them on it. And so I think voice UIs is a really exciting next space for us. It does require a pretty slick and efficient AI system, which is why we have to make these we have to increase the capabilities. But we're working on it, and we'll have, I think, a prototype of that. Patrick, I don't want to speak too soon here. Sometime in the next little while, there'll be at least a beta up and running that people can test. But particularly when I speak to educators, this is a big one, right? Personalized AI learning for people, personalized catechetical instruction, I think could be big. And again, not to replace the catechist, the role of the priest, the role of the parish community and all of this, but to supplement what they may be learning in the classroom and being able to study it at home, I think could be big for catechetics in general. So personalization. Right, so one of the things I'm really excited about with AI is the ability for AI systems to uniquely understand how people learn and then be able to tailor kind of a unique educational program for that individual. And I think, like I said, I think AI, even within a catechetical context, there could be really cool use cases in Catholic education to kind of leverage AI's ability to understand users and deliver to them knowledge, information, and wisdom and information resources, through this personalization process. Agents is obviously a huge one for us. We're already working a little bit with agents under the hood. Agents will become increasingly important for us, especially as some of our people that we're talking to want to start using agents in their use case. And so making sure that we can create these kind of Catholic agents that can respect bounds is something that we're working on right now. Obviously, as we know, agents is one of those important steps on the way to artificial general intelligence. It looks like, number one is what we've been experienced with basic AIs up to date, and then O1 seems to be close to step 2. There's debate around that. Number 3 is agents. And so agents is, as many of you are aware, is the next frontier. Multimodality is something that we're working on as well. Pretty soon, I think as of next week, you'll be able to actually upload an essay you wrote to Magisterium AI, and it'll analyze it. And if you ask it for critique, Did I say anything heretical? Are there any resources I should add to this document? The AI will be able to do that. And eventually, we want to get into image generation as well, fine-tuning a model which, within certain bounds, could help generate images and things like that's useful for our use case. Translation models is also huge for us. One of the things I'm really excited about is in places like the Pontifical Oriental Institute, there are experts who are one of maybe a few dozen people who can speak some of these ancient languages. And so one of our products we want to work on is helping these people, some of them which are retired, to then work actually training a model on this particular obscure language. And then, of course, once the model understands it, if there are books or reflections on these ancient languages within these books within the library, the AI would then be able to translate it, because of course AIs are kind of limited in what their ability to translate based on the trained data they have access to. So if we can build new data sources on these more obscure languages and things, then we can help the AI systems increase their capabilities and again democratize access to those insights. Thanks. I've talked about AI democratization. That's very important for us as a company, and we eventually want to open source our model as soon as we possibly can, so people can build on top of it. And then, finally, one of the things that I'm really excited to is just to learn from you all. What are your plans for AI? What are some tools that you'd like to build that we can help support? Again, like we want to be a platform. So if there's ways we can support you in building your own applications, if there's capabilities you need, we want to continue a dialogue so we can continue to make sure that we're innovating in areas that are most useful to you all. And I very much look forward to seeing how you leverage AI in the future. And I think ultimately, I do think AI will be enormously helpful, like the printing press, I think, in proclaiming the gospel. Of course, it has to be done very carefully in consultation with our bishops and with the Holy See. But I think it's too important a tool to ignore. And so I think we should invest heavily in it. But we should, of course, recognize that unlike the big companies which are chasing AGI, that's not our objective, right? Our objective is to create as faithful as an AI system as possible. And that's a different course and trajectory, which I don't know many organizations that are on that course and trajectory. And so we need to figure out what that means and make sure we're working with experts who can guide us on that. And thank you very much.